Sigmund Freud is one of the most innovative and influential and controversial figures in Jewish philosophy, though he'd likely balk at that characterization as a philosopher. He was trained as a neurologist, thinking about how nervous systems discharge energy, around the same time that psychology was a brand new field. In conversation with a colleague discussing a patient known under the pseudonym Anna O., Freud began using the term talking cure. That is, as much as we now take his ideas for granted here, it was an innovative idea to think that fluctuations in the nervous system or conflicts in the psyche could be resolved by simply talking through them. Psychoanalysis famously splits the subject between the conscious and the preconscious and the unconscious. This is the topographical model, often likened to an iceberg where most of the mass is underneath the water, just as most of ourselves is unconscious. He also developed a structural model later, describing us as a combination of conscious ego, unconscious id, and semi-conscious superego. But we won't go into that now. In The Future of an Illusion, a study of religion among several other works in which he focused on religion, it is mainly important that we have this language of the conscious and unconscious. So it's important to clarify that the unconscious is not a thing for Freud. It's not a particular part of the brain or some hidden synaptic tier. It's not a thing that exists at all, but instead it's a type of dynamic principle or working theory. It's a theory that predicts and accounts for behavior. The central insight here is that there is a split between the conscious evocation, such as the conscious description of what we believe, and what we unconsciously attest to what we believed by our action. There is always at least some split between this conscious level and unconscious level of evocation versus action. So it's a type of working theory. Psychoanalysis claims that most of us is unconscious. From the moment we are first told no as an infant, we begin to repress our impulses. We think we are good, perhaps, because we are repressing what we would rather do. But repression doesn't eliminate a problem, as if it's stamping out a fire, so much as it, in a sense, relocates the fire to a different room in the house. Instead, it's more like moving that fire to another room, but it still generates symptoms in the background that we must give an account for. Famously, the axiom of psychoanalysis is that whatever represses will return. Repression and the act of the return of the repressed are always one and the same, right next to each other. Freud was interested in how religious behavior looked a lot like ritual ceremonials of obsessional neurotics. So, for example, when his patients needed to position a chair in a certain way before leaving the house, or quadruple check to make sure the gas oven was off before leaving the house, these patients fully understand that they're not actually affecting any concrete change. They didn't need to quadruple check. Checking once was enough. But instead, what they're doing is mitigating their own internal anxiety. This, Freud said, is precisely what is happening in a religious ritual. If people pray ritualistically, it doesn't matter whether they can measure the effect on the world. All that matters is that it works. That is to say, all that matters is that it mitigates the anxiety, not necessarily changes the world. So in this book, Freud is analyzing ideals of a culture, such as patriotism might be one ideal. But the highest ideals are those which are religious. These are insurmountable, and it is frightening to think of what could possibly happen to replace religion if religion itself declines. And Freud sees real use in religion even as an atheist, and he differentiates between illusion and delusion in this book. So, illusion is a belief founded on a wish, while a delusion is objectively false. A belief can be one or the other, or it can be both, or it can be neither. Freud famously uses the example of what exactly is going on when people say the Messiah will come. Is this a wish? Is it a delusion? Is it factually true? What's actually going on when somebody asserts that they believe the Messiah will come or come back? Freud thought that all religious belief involved wishes or wish fulfillment. That is, every belief, no matter how grotesque, signals some sort of desire that the subject wants the world to be true, wants the world to be such and such a way. even if they don't realize it. So you can wrestle with that idea, but what Freud gives us, regardless, is a way to separate out the veracity of belief on the one hand from the operative power of that belief on the other. A way to think about whether or not a belief is true or not, which is different than whether or not the subject wants that idea to be true or not. And that is certainly a powerful tool to use as a distinctive, to use in distinction between ideas in a philosophy of religion.